Well, I'm standing in one of the least frequently visited parts of our property. It's also one of the quietest and the coolest. It's very different from the wider food forest, which is far sunnier. You need much more open space out there where we're growing food crops, but in here, which as you can see is largely native forest and quite thick native forest and well-grown native forest. It hasn't always been that way. When we first arrived at this property, this was really just a fetid swamp. It wasn't very pleasant to be in at all. A lot of the topsoil from further up in the land had been bulldozed down into this area, and this stream that I'm standing in front of was completely covered and nothing but really a smelly soak. And I spent a lot of time with a spade taking that mud, it was mud, out of the stream bed and putting it back up onto the what now is our orchard area. And uncovered the stream bed here, and in doing that also uncovered a spring, and I think we're very lucky to have a spring on our property here. That's a treasure for us. Now it contains native fish which swim up the stream here from the estuary, which this stream feeds into, and wriggle through this damp area here and into the spring. So if we had a look into there, you'd see that there are native galaxid fish swimming in it, and they swim up the stream proper here too. It didn't take a great deal of effort really to, aside from digging out of the stream, to get this forest up and growing, and it's certainly come through now. My main job in here, when I do anything in here at all, is to high prune some of these trees to let some more light in so that the understory can come away, because it does get very dark in here. Now I'm standing at the edge of the Zone 5 area, or the native tree area, which we were in just a moment ago. Much darker in there, much brighter out here. And why this area is important to me is that I've used the backdrop of the protection from the wind of the native trees, and I've planted fruit trees here. For example, this plum, these red currants, this grapevine here, a dogwood, a fruiting dogwood, and a Japanese raisin tree, for example. What they do here is they capture all the sunshine that's available to them. The north is out this way, and so they're quite productive there. Further out into the food forest itself, I find myself standing amongst a combination of fruiting trees, berry bushes, even plants like this Jerusalem artichoke here, which provides a very good store of tubers that stay in the ground and don't need to be harvested, and so they're always there no matter what else might be ready around the garden. This apple tree here is a particularly productive one. It's a Keswick codlin, a very old heritage variety from Britain. It's where we are at the moment in terms of the season is you don't see so much fruit on the trees because they've just been picked or have been picked over the last month, but that Keswick codlin in particular was spectacularly productive this year, totally covered in very large and healthy apples. There are apricots nearby. This apple tree here is coming into its into being ready to harvest now. This one's just been picked, and underpinning all of this growth, the structure of the fruit trees, we've got a lot of other beneficial plants such as the peas that are planted here, nitrogen producing legumes. This cow parsley here, which is flowering somewhat out of season, but that provides a very effective fast-growing understory which smothers out other plants which aren't quite so useful to us, like some of the vigorous grasses that would grow here if there wasn't anything else in their place. There's a black boy peach, an old peach variety growing behind us there, and clambering up the raspberries beside it is one of the vetch. This is the hairy vetch, again a legume. Permaculture talks about using leguminous trees, shrubs and annuals as part of a way of improving soil nutrition because of the ability of legumes to capture nitrogen and store them in their roots. And so we've looked at a whole range of leguminous plants and integrated them right throughout the whole system. There are fennels here. Fennel would represent perhaps the kind of, and the cow parsley would represent the kind of plant that is an insect attractor, attracting predatory hoverflies and ichneumanoid wasps and so on that go out and deal with the soft-bodied aphids, for example, without us having to apply any kind of sprays. Even organic homemade sprays. I don't like to use them at all. I like to let the system do all of the work. Although our focus in our food forest is on plants that produce food that we can eat, there's also a significant place for other fruits that perhaps aren't primary for eating but are supportive of that whole system. Over here we've got a fairly old golden hornet crabapple, and the value of that crabapple in particular, being in the golden family, is that they have a long flowering period and bees can visit the golden hornet crabapple. It's only a crabapple, not a full-sized apple, and then go out to the other apple species and pollinate those. So it's kind of serving a very important purpose, but it has other purposes as well, and we make a very nice crabapple jelly from the golden hornet crabapple. We talked a little bit about some of the berry fruits, and this is a gooseberry, a standard gooseberry here, although there are thousands of different gooseberry varieties. This is a large green one which is very good for freezing and making pies with. In behind there is a similar plant. It's a Worcesterberry, which has a very dark red, purpley red berry, which is a very nice dessert berry. Supporting those are the fennels, and we've got comfrey underneath the whole system here. You'll know that comfrey is a plant that is a miner with a deep root that brings up nutrients which were otherwise leached away from the system back up onto the surface. So around all of our apple trees and most of our fruit trees we have a circle of comfrey planted so that we don't have to keep feeding fertiliser to our fruit trees. The system feeds itself. To my left here I'm standing beside a young pear tree which has produced quite well this year. This is the first year that it's come up with fruit, other than one or two last year, but it's a decent fruiting this year. They've still got a way to go. And as an understory for that particular tree, we have clovers, which are nitrogenous, and we also have this leguminous lupin. And while lupins are usually just used as a soil conditioner or a soil improver, we have a species of lupin here, the white lupin, Lupinus alba, which is edible, and you can eat the pods and also the seeds of that plant. So some of these things cross over from being just, utilitarian to also being edible. And it's surprising how many different varieties of plant there are that people don't generally regard as being edible, but can be. One of the trees that I find very useful and quite exciting to have in a temperate food forest garden like the one that I've got here is the hazel. Some people call it the hazelnut, but I guess that's really just the nut. But these hazels, and there are a number of varieties, they love this kind of soil type, temperature and climatic conditions. And there are different ways to manage a hazel. This one's just been left to grow and it's producing nuts now, but on a number of my hazels I coppice them because I want them not for their nuts but for the staves that they produce. They're useful for a whole lot of different things. Hazels are also a very good marketable nut. People like to buy them, and they're easy to reproduce in that they'll grow from the nuts. So it's a tree I really like. It can stand up to the conditions, doesn't mind wind at all, and it produces quite a lot of material if you wanted to make firewood from them, or even just to cut and drop in order to make extra mulch. And they're sacrificeable. If you don't want them anymore, you just cut them off at the base. Sweet chestnut was another tree that I'm growing here now, and I've only just started doing that. I've seen the potential for the hazels. Now I think the sweet chestnut is going to be a tree that behaves in much the same manner but produces a different kind of nut. These apples are called Peasgood Nonsuch, named after Mrs. Peasgood back in 1640 or whenever it was that she first discovered this apple growing from a seedling. They grow very large indeed, and what I'm showing here is how we have to protect them so carefully. They take a long time to mature, and that gives the birds a very big opportunity to get in there and attack them. So I've just used onion bags here from the food cooperative, and I've covered up as many of those apples individually or in small groups as I can. Otherwise we'll lose the lot. But as you can see, they're a hefty apple, and if we're not careful, the weight of those apples will cause the branch to break right off. So growing apples as your mainstay crop in a food forest does take some care with pruning, grafting, general tree care. They're not a carefree variety of fruit. You do have to do quite a lot of work around them, especially guarding them from the birds. Here's an example of a young apple tree that's fruited really well. These are good, solid, healthy apples. And in behind here, I think you can see what happens when you don't protect the fruit from the birds. Birds come and peck out these apples, hollow them out, and render them useless. That we've learned it's best to leave the pecked apple on the tree rather than picking it and taking it away, because the birds will continue to feed on that one, leaving these other ones alone. This area has served as our vegetable garden for many years now. In fact, right since the time that we first moved onto the property. It's nowhere near the house, and so in terms of permaculture design, it's in the wrong spot. We chose it because it was the only sheltered spot we had in the early days. Now it's a big open area, which is quite different from the food forest itself, but what I want to do is bring it into the forest and bring the forest into it, so that it's pretty much like the rest of the property. The soil here is very good because we've been building it up for so long. Up until now we've had raised beds, wooden-sided raised beds here, but just recently we've taken those away as part of that reintegration program.